أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
Hello and welcome to Bud's RPG Review, where I give my thoughts on role-playing games, card games and board games. Today's review is Iconoclasts for Delta Green the Role-Playing Game by Arcdream Publishing, Part 1. Okay, first a bit of history. Originally part of the first highly successful Delta Green Kickstarter, Iconoclasts was a stretch goal to be written by Scott-glancy that was designed to be played as a single 4-hour convention scenario. At some point it was decided that it would be expanded into a full campaign and was released as a 206-page hardback book in 2022. It is worth mentioning that the word iconoclast is defined as a person who attacks or criticises cherished beliefs, institutions or societal norms. It can also mean a destroyer of images or sacred religious objects. To the cover. Here we have a decent piece by Dennis Detwiller that shows a key scene in the first chapter. All will become clear later. On to the inside. There'll be spoilers from this point on, so stop watching now if you intend to play this. Moving past the various content and credits, we get to the foreword by Scott-glancy. He talks about the physical destruction of cultural artefacts being a key to ethnic cleansing by removing evidence of their existence and history, quoting a line from George Orwell's 1984, "Who controls the past controls the future, who controls the present controls the past." He decries ISIL's assault upon the relics of Iraq and Syria, talking about the Caliphate's attempt at creating an essential year zero, one where there is the pretense that nothing existed before. After that, we move on to the introduction. Iconoclast is set in 2016, at a time where the programme becomes aware of an unnatural incursion in Mosul, a place racked by war. The players are sent to investigate it and gather resources to combat it, with a group of agents infiltrating ISIL territory in order to contain it before it spreads. It is in 5 parts. We firstly have an introduction called Horrors in Mosul, which gives an overview of the setting, and a great old one called the Father of War, and the cult that serves it, the Sons of War. Then the campaign is divided into essentially 4 parts. Part 1 is called A Black Smoke Rising. In this part, the players take on the roles of ISIL foreign fighters who are given the duty of breaking idols from the region's past while recording it for the purposes of propaganda. Unfortunately, they break the wrong artefact and set a bloodthirsty entity free into the world. It escapes and builds a cult around itself. The cult call it Abu Harb, the Father of War. Part 2 is called Operation Bonebox. This has the agents switching to members of the programme. What they did as ISIL fighters will be shown to them as part of the mission briefing in the propaganda video that was recovered from the incident. It includes information from a member of the other Delta Green, those known as the Outlaws. Part 3 is called The Evil of the Whisperer. This involves the agents going to Kirkuk to gather information and assets from the region. What they are facing is an unknown to the programme, so it's up to the agents to evaluate its strength and put together plans to either contain or eliminate it. This chapter can be played as long suspense or tight shots of discovery and disinformation. The final part of the campaign is Part 4, Among Jinn and Men. Here they must infiltrate Mosul, which is occupied by ISIL, and move against the Sons of War to have a confrontation with the Father of War. This is possible as 2 teams, one gathering intel and another skilled at infiltration, combat and covert operations. They need to stop the threat of the Father of War. Part 5 is called Blacker Than Black, and this gives new rules for the handler around suspense, spying and black ops. And finally we have an appendix that collects the rituals, artefacts, tomes and the like, as well as sample names. After this we're greeted with a double-page spread of Mosul, which shows all of the neighbourhoods and important sites. Okay, so let's move on to horrors in Mosul. Iconoclasts takes place during the Syrian civil war in 2016. ISIL declared themselves a worldwide caliphate in 2014 and subsequently created their own military, courts, passports and currency while enforcing a brutal interpretation of Islam and the Quran. It goes into the origins of ISIL, where it discusses how they came from the US programme to remove all Ba'ath Party members from the government. Many of these former members joined cells that fought the US occupation, and most were Sunni Muslims, who are a religious minority in Iraq. Due to the 2007 troop surge in Iraq that was instigated by the US, most of these cells were run out by 2011, taking shelter in Syria, who supported the US invasion of Iraq. Syria had, however, done a lot to assist the resistance groups against the US, despite Iraqi Baathists being Sunni and Syrian Baathists being Alawite. In 2011, the Syrian government met protests of the Arab Spring with lethality, and this lit the fires of a full-scale rebellion. Those Sunni Baathists from Iraq found common cause with Sunni rebels in Syria and formed the ISIL movement. The rebellion shifted gear into full-blown sectarian civil war. Meanwhile in Iraq, Sunni insurgents had been fighting the Shia population, and in Syria the majority was Sunni while the ruling minority was Shia. ISIL had a hugely successful recruitment drive by demonstrating that they were the most effective insurgents against the Syrian Ba'athist government, subsequently taking control of entire cities and setting up Raqqa in Syria as their capital city. In 2014, 1,500 ISIL fighters crossed the border into Iraq and routed 60,000 troops stationed in Mosul, bringing between 3 to 8 million citizens under their rule. The US responded with Operation Inherent Resolve, deploying special forces with Iraqi and Kurdish units to Syria and Iraq. The viability of the governments of Iraq and Syria appeared to be in doubt by 2015, and the Peshmerga launched an offensive with US air support to reclaim the villages around Mosul. Aid from Iran, Russia and the US has meant that they are beginning to push back, and the next stage, Operation Conquest, means that ISIL's days are numbered. We have maps showing both regional control and majority religions, and then we move to two in-the-field box-outs. The first is Islam and ISIL. It discusses the peculiar expression of Islam demonstrated by ISIL that is a prominent feature of the campaign. It talks about it being the most recent of the three Abrahamic religions and points out that some traditionalists believe that the only legitimate law is religious law or Sharia, and that religious leaders are the only ones that are legitimate. It also talks about the Sunni and the Shia. Sunni is the largest branch of Islam, accounting for around 85% of Muslims worldwide, and differences with the Shia branches caused conflict over the centuries with regard to the rules of succession. Sunni Muslims believe that the most learned and important leaders should in turn decide who lead, whereas Shia Muslims believe that only those who share the Prophet Muhammad's bloodline should lead, and only one of them can be right. The population of Iraq is between 50 to 65% Shia, but for decades it was ruled by the Sunni Ba'athists Arab nationalists until Saddam Hussein was overthrown. Their neighbour Iran is around 90% Shia and always pushing to expand its influence into Iraq. We have a full page of the demographics of the Middle East, which includes the nations, populations, majority religion and type of government, and this is followed by another in the field, where it details the beliefs of ISIL. On a basic level, ISIL is a Sunni fundamentalist group that believes that all who do not accept ISIL's rule, be that Sunni or Shia, are apostates who may be attacked, imprisoned, killed, robbed or enslaved. They seek to redefine what a Muslim truly is, and also to undermine certain protections granted by Sharia, similar to the Wahhabist sect of Saudi Arabia. They combine this radical fundamentalism with a contempt for Islamic scholarship and have an apocalyptic and literal reading of the Quran. They see an Islamic version of Armageddon near Dabiq in Syria, where an army of angels will join the jihadists against the apostate and infidels. Essentially, once you remove the trappings of religion, ISIL is a sadistic genocidal police state. After this we move on to the villain of the piece, the father of war. During prehistoric times, an avatar of Nyarlathotep that was particularly bloodthirsty appeared in the Caucasus Mountains that taught the tribesfolk to make deadly knives and arrowheads from obsidian and to use them in slaughter and sacrifice. Records of this god were found in Assyria, where it was worshipped as Shagash, its cultists calling it Abim Anuntum, the father of war. During the making of the weapons, each chip of obsidian held a mote of consciousness of the Father of War, and when enough of them had been accumulated, they gained the ability to move of their own volition, a whirlwind of razor-sharp shards that remained quiet during the day. They could flay the skin from humans who encountered it, or accept its worshippers. The Sons of War are those worshippers, and accepting the Father of War means accepting it into your body. Each cultist is required to swallow a chip of obsidian imbued with its power. This acceptance is called the Vigil of Stone by modern worshippers. Sometimes the Sons of War will be used as eyes and ears for the Father of War, though it cannot read their thoughts. Where it needs to call them, the chip inside of them pulls them, causing them pain if they don't answer. The Father of War expects 100% obedience, and those who disobey it or share the cult's secrets cause the obsidian chip to slice its way through their heart. As it is newly manifested, it demands to be taken somewhere away from the sun to build a suitable temple, and then to provide it with human sacrifices, preferably killed slowly with obsidian. The methods of summoning the Father of War are rare, and the Sons of War have not existed for thousands of years. They've come into the 21st century accidentally. Shagash was worshipped in ancient Assyria, and the Father of War was carried in an amphora that was held sacred. This was called the Throne of Blood. The cult ceased to function when a rebellious priest inscribed the bronze stopper of the amphora with an elder sign, seeking to control the god. When the Father of War refused, the priest buried the Throne of Blood, hoping it would never be found, though as these things always go, it eventually was. Next we move on to one of the key characters of the scenario, Tariq Muhammad Rassam. The person who discovered the Throne of Blood and hid it for decades has been a Delta Green ally since World War II. His history with the occult and Delta Green is deep, though he eventually fell out of touch with them. He quietly went about his business of confronting unnatural threats in the region and ended up discovering the Throne of Blood and being its terrified caretaker, performing unnatural rites to maintain his youthfulness, knowing that they would eventually be the death of him. He often wondered if the constant turmoil in the region was the influence of the Father of War and whether there could ever be peace. He mulled smuggling the Throne of Blood and sealing it in concrete forever away from his country, and then ISIL arrived. The city and its surrounds came under the influence of ISIL quickly, with the population being subjected to terror and cruelty at ISIL's hands. Corpses were left everywhere as a warning, and executions were public and grotesque. He grew concerned as to what would happen if ISIL discovered the Throne of Blood. He began making plans to move it from his vault into Turkey. The crossing of many borders would be difficult, so he reached out to Delta Green, as only they would understand the awful situation. He bought a black market satellite phone and had letters smuggled out of the country to a cousin in America who delivered each letter by hand to each contact he had made during the 30+ years he had worked with Delta Green. He surmised that they would all be dead, but had a hunch that Delta Green would keep watch even on their dead agents, and he was correct. A letter turned up at the Library of Congress addressed to Joseph Camp, and somebody noticed. He made contact with the outlaws, though he knew nothing of the schism that Delta Green had gone through. He believed that there was just one Delta Green, and the outlaws reached out to him, convincing him that they were the same Delta Green he had known long ago. They arranged to have the amphora moved to Turkey, and a plan was made. Rassam's Kurdish contacts were to bring 2 Delta Green agents to his house at 2 a.m. on the 24th of March 2016, whereby they would take Rassam and the amphora across the border to Turkey and then onto the US via a military flight that bypassed customs. Except the plan was not executed. Al-Hizbah, the religious police of ISIL, have chosen the 23rd of March to investigate Rassam as they believe he is hiding forbidden art and artefacts. Once the Father of War is free, there is a specific chain of events that happen. The 2 Delta Green agents who were meant to be taking the Throne of Blood to Turkey arrive just after the Father of War departs, and they only have a short period to investigate. They take the ISIL team's camera and the stopper from the amphora that is engraved with the Elder Sign, something they recognise, though the Throne of Blood is too heavy to move. They then journey to Turkey and examine the video, realising that they are way out of their depth. There is discussion with ACEL, who eventually let the programme know. The programme sees the massive problem of an unnatural threat in ISIL territory and as such assembles a team to operate within Iraq. Meanwhile, ISIL started an investigation into what happened at Rassam's house. They notice that the propaganda team has not returned and send back up to check things out in the morning of the 24th of March 2016. Then ISIL's internal security service, Amn al-Dawla, are drawn to the slaughter of fighters as a number of checkpoints on the night the Father of War is freed. Colonel Ahmed al-Jabiri, the highest-ranking member of Amn al-Dawla in Mosul, connects the events at the Rassam house to the checkpoint deaths. He arrests Daoud el-Said al-Hizbar, the person who arranged the search, though hours of interrogation uncovers nothing beyond the belief that Rassam was a covert pagan practicing black magic. Al-Jabiri, an educated man and general non-believer in superstition and the supernatural, continues his investigation. The next night, flayed corpses start appearing around Mosul, similar to the bodies found at Rassam's house. Families are killed in their homes and armed roadblocks are found skinless. On the odd occasion, someone vanishes. Families are missing members. The Father of War is building its cult. Al-Jabiri is at a loss as to how this is happening, so focuses on finding the missing ISIL fighters and Mosul civilians. There is a news blackout, but despite this, word begins spreading around the city of the horrific flayings. Everyone is terrified. Al-Jabiri believes that it is a psyops by the CIA. As a reaction to this, he arranges for the Wolves of Al-Mansur, a Chechen mercenary company, to be brought in to help when he roots out the Americans responsible for the atrocities in Mosul. He eventually tracks down some of the missing fighters to the ruins of Nineveh, where the Father of War has dug a pit for shelter. On the 30th of March 2016, Al-Jabiri, his Amin al-Dawla agents and the Wolves of Al-Mansur attack the lair of the Father of War and, well, it goes as you might expect. Most of the mercenaries die screaming and skinless. To save their own lives, Al-Jabiri and 4 Amin al-Dawla agents and 20 Chechens pledge themselves to the Father of War, each swallowing a sliver of obsidian. They have no choice but to obey their god, and as time passes they come to want to obey their master and see the value of blood and victory. The Father of War instructs Al-Jabiri to produce more worshippers for Abna al-Harb, and this gives the cult access to the highest levels of ISIL. They are harder to detect due to Al-Jabiri's counterintelligence training. He instructs the cult to stop leaving flayed bodies behind and has them dismembered and disposed of in the Tigris River. The citywide reports of flayings come to a stop. We have a small but important section here concerning what should happen if Al-Jabiri dies early on. It suggests making Abu al-Shishani, the commander of the Wolves of Al-Mansur, take over the leadership of the Sons of War, and due to his lower public profile, he's harder to track than Al-Jabiri. Al-Jabiri, now in total servitude to the Father of War, assigns Sons of War members to ISIL execution squads, with those due to be killed brought to the caves underneath Nineveh. He also selects security officers in ISIL to be tricked or forced to go down to Nineveh and either take the Vigil Stone or end up in the Tigris River. These disappearances go largely unnoticed in Mosul. Al-Jabiri is recruiting the very people who should be hunting down the cult. It's not, however, a flawless plan. Inside ISIL security operations and Al-Hizba, the disappearances are noticed and are the subject of rumours, as those who vanished are amongst the most loyal in ISIL and thought of as highly unlikely to run away or be secretly arrested. Their disappearances have not been ordered by nor are being investigated by the state. This chatter has been intercepted by US intelligence assets. The Sons of War is growing steadily, initially out of abject fear, but the divine intervention promised by ISIL to destroy infidels has painted the Father of War as one who will protect its children. Al-Jabiri sells the worship of the Father of War with a blend of Arab folklore and horribly misinterpreted Islam, claiming that the Father is the Archangel Azrael or Malak al-Maut, the Quranic angel of death, and that Azrael serves the will of Allah by destroying sinners and those who oppose ISIL. On the 1st of April 2016, the day the agents attend the programme briefing, the cult consists of around 24 Sons of War, including Al-Jabiri, 20 Chechen fighters and 4 Amin al-Dawla agents. The rest were killed by Al-Jabiri's initial raid. The cult is growing by around 1 member per day. The longer the agents take to resolve the incident, the bigger the Sons of War will become. Al-Jabiri intends to pull out of Mosul and write out the summons of the Father of War in modern Arabic and teach it to as many Sons of War as he can manage. On the 2nd of August 2016, he plans to send the Sons of War to Raqqa, the capital city of ISIL in Syria, and ensure that at least one of them summons the Father of War, allowing it to appear there and take up residence. He also intends to sneak the Father of War out of Mosul physically in an armoured truck on the 3rd of August with an armed escort of the Sons of War. The Father of War has refused to enter the Throne of Blood as it believes it could become trapped again. Delta Green's mission is to locate the Father of War and work out how to neutralise it before the cult leaves Mosul. Failure means new cults will spring up dedicated to it in war zones globally. The next section deals with life in Mosul. We discover that Mosul is an ancient city that was reshaped by Saddam Hussein and then by ISIL. Before 2014, the city's population was around 1.8 million, but since the arrival of ISIL, only around 700,000 remain, with the rest being either dead or having left. The city is a mixture of rubble and undamaged buildings, and it is largely silent. Women do not walk unaccompanied, and when they do, they wear the niqab. They do not work in public other than a few from the Al-Cancer Brigade, a branch of Al-Hizbah that is all-female and that punishes women for moral failings. Graffiti dedicated to ISIL covers buildings, denouncing the population for their devotion or instructing that buildings now belong to ISIL, and the Adhan, the Muslim call to prayer, happens 5 times daily and is enforced mercilessly. Cell phone service has not worked since 2014. Music is banned, as is television. Satellite dishes have been removed. It is a silent city. The streets are clean due to the waste removal services being under threat of imprisonment. Smoking is a flogging offence, and there are no cigarette butts anywhere. Severed heads are displayed at execution sites with cigarettes stuck in the lips. The threat of punishment keeps the city services such as water, gas and electricity running under the threat of imprisonment or death. The streets are dust clogged due to traffic despite the round-the-clock sweeping. Driving is slow and traffic is limited to official and commercial purposes, and there are checkpoints all over the city, especially on the Tigris River crossings. The men at these checkpoints are often young and bored and flaunt their authority brutally, looking for an excuse to open fire. This causes massive traffic jams. At intersections, ISIL hang the bodies of those who have been executed for crimes against God and state and are left out in the sun for days, with the heads sometimes being piled separately from the bodies. The smell of death is everywhere. Drivers are forced to see the corpses hanging from overpasses, often swarming with maggots that drop down onto the roofs of cars that pass. These bodies are guarded to stop the families removing them and giving them proper Islamic funerals. As you may imagine, the guards are edgy and short-tempered, as this is a job they really don't want to do. For the innocent citizens of Mosul, it is a hellish place to live. We have a map that shows all of the activity of the Father of War, which handily has the date next to it, and then we move on to the timeline. In order to understand the timeline, I need to point out that fictional events are italicised, while the actual real-life events are not, and that each time a fictional event happens, a map is included to show the details. Operations against ISIL by Kurdish and Iraqi forces are the backdrop of the campaign, and Operation Conquest is not a direct attack on Mosul, just one that is capturing the villages and towns that surround the city, though the particularly notorious executions of ISIL have been included, as these events could have a direct impact on the campaign. The fictional events detailed are here unless the agents get involved, going right up to the Sons of War evacuating Mosul for Raqqa, and all the events happen in 2016. We begin on the 23rd of March on a full moon, and the Al-Hizbah fighters raiding Rassam's home, with the Father of War being released on the world. This is followed by Agents Sloan and Stillwater arriving there on the 24th of March and finding carnage. They remove the amphora stopper and a video recorder and flee before ISIL investigators arrive. The Father of War attacks an ISIL checkpoint and travels to Nineveh, leaving flayed corpses behind it. After it arrives, it carves out caves beneath the ruins. Iraqi forces advance to the west of Qayara and are reported to have recaptured several villages from ISIL, though it is later revealed that government forces were trying to capture Al-Nazir. Around 200 US Marines and US Army and Iraqi soldiers support an offensive from howitzers at Firebase Bell that then faces rockets and suicide bomber attacks. The Pentagon renames the Karasor counter-fire complex on the 30th of March, eventually being known as Karasor Base. Amn al-Dakhili responds to the checkpoint massacre, and Al-Hizbah follow up on the missing team, finding the massacre at Rassam's house. Al-Jabiri comes to the massacre and takes over the investigation, finding Rassam's artefacts lab and library. After the scene is photographed and documented, an ISIL team is brought in to clean it up and the house is placed under guard. Al-Jabiri looks for related attacks. Overnight leading into the 25th of March, the Father of War visits a home north of Nineveh and 7 of the family are flayed, with 2 sons vanishing, being forced to accept the vigil of stone. The massacre is discovered and reported to Al-Jabiri. The Father of War also kills 6 ISIL fighters in 2 attacks and 2 escape alive, but are incoherent, having taken the vigil of stone. Street patrols are ordered by Al-Jabiri and Sloan and Stillwater report to ACEL, who decide to bring their evidence to the programme. On the 26th of March, Iraqi forces shell ISIL headquarters and Qayara, killing 25, and an ISIL fighter is killed, and 3 have apparently deserted. They have in fact joined the Sons of War and taken the Vigil of Stone. The Father of War slaughters another family near Nineveh, with 6 dying and the son vanishing, joining the Sons of War and taking the Vigil of Stone. Sloan and Stillwater arrive in Incirlik AFB Turkey and take military flights, Sloan to Germany and Stillwater to America. On the 27th of March, 8 more ISIL fighters are killed, 2 go missing and 3 escape. All 5 survive by taking the Vigil of Stone. Al-Jabiri makes arrangements for the Chechen wolves of Al-Mansur to be brought to Mosul. Agent Sloan contacts the program and begins convincing them that the threat is genuine. The program moves to confirm this intel. Abu Furqan al-Misri, an ISIL commander, is killed in action. On the 28th of March, 7 more ISIL fighters are killed on the streets of Mosul. 2 go missing and 2 survive. All have taken the Vigil of Stone. Al-Jabiri starts to suspect that the survivors of the nightly attacks may have involvement in other attacks, and as such has the survivors placed under surveillance. On the 29th of March, Al-Jabiri discovers that the night attack survivors are indeed in touch with those that have gone missing, with surveillance showing evidence that they have visited the tunnels under Nineveh. He prepares to raid there the next night with the wolves of Al-Mansur. Meanwhile, another home is attacked and 8 family members are discovered flayed, with the eldest son missing. He has, of course, taken the Vigil of Stone. The program intercepts radio chatter regarding ISIL fighters and civilians being discovered flayed. This convinces them to take Agent Sloan's story seriously. They assemble a response team, the players' agents, and establish Operation Bonebox. It's a 3rd quarter moon on the 30th of March, and Al-Jabiri raids the tunnels underneath Nineveh. 70 mercenaries die skinless, painful deaths, with Al-Jabiri, 4 Aman al-Dawla officers, and 20 of the wolves of Al-Mansur surviving by taking the Vigil of Stone and joining the Sons of War. At this point, Al-Jabiri takes charge and instructs the Sons of War to dismember the bodies of their comrades and dispose of them in the Tigris River. From this point onward, there are no more open attacks on ISIL fighters or civilians. March the 31st sees the program flying agents to Panzer Kaserne in Germany, and on the 1st of April, Mosul residents begin to flee the city due to fear of being bombed. The region becomes flooded with refugees. Coalition forces destroy an ammo dump at Kayara. The agents are briefed on Operation Bonebox. The 2nd of April brings heavy fighting in Al-Nazar, leaving 40 ISIL fighters dead, and the agents fly to Kirkuk Airport, being assigned a corner of the USAF base to begin their mission. The 4th of April sees coalition airstrikes destroy, with the permission of Turkey, the Turkish consulate in Mosul, which has been occupied by ISIL forces, and Al-Nazar holds out against Iraqi forces. On the 5th of April, airstrikes wipe out ISIL's training HQ near the Mosul Grand Mosque. 50 are killed, and the following day Peshmerga and allied tribal forces assist the Iraqi army at Al-Nazar. The 7th of April is a new moon, and a bridge crossing the Tigris River is destroyed in Mosul, cutting off a valuable supply line. Also, a laboratory producing chlorine gas, chlorine-filled rockets and other poisonous materials is levelled by airstrikes in Al-Sawaya village. 30 ISIL fighters are killed. The Father of War rises from beneath Nineveh and attacks an Iraqi armoured platoon. The 12 crewmen are flayed alive, and the tanks are recovered so that they can be sanitised and put back into service. The 9th of April brings more coalition airstrikes in Mosul. 2 on an ISIL defensive fence in Al-Hajj that kills over 20 militants and destroys the base, in addition to jets killing a further 10 militants in Al-Mahana district. On the 10th of April, the ancient Mashki Gate at Nineveh is levelled by ISIL bulldozers. More airstrikes take out ISIL rocket launching and mortar teams near Mosul and Kayara on the 12th of April, and on the 14th of April it is the 1st quarter moon, and ISIL bulldozers further destroy the ancient ruins of Nineveh by taking down the Adad Gate and adjacent walls. On the 16th of April, Imad Khalid Afar, a senior ISIL commander and advisor, is killed by coalition airstrikes near the Salam hospital in Mosul that is being used as an operational headquarters by ISIL. And on the 18th of April, US and Peshmerga forces raid Hamal al-Alil with helicopters south of Mosul, killing 3 ISIL militants, with one of them being the former top ISIL commander in Mosul, Salam Abd Shabib al-Jabouri. The Peshmerga also launch an offensive northwest of Mosul, capturing the villages of Nawara and Barima, further entering Khorsabad on the 19th of April. On the 21st of April, 2 fighters and 3 civilians are executed by ISIL for homosexuality by being thrown from the top of a high building in Mosul, and it is also reported that since 2014, ISIL have executed over 250 women by firing squad for refusing to become temporary wives for ISIL fighters. This is followed by a full moon on the 22nd of April. The Iraqi army capture Mahan, a village southwest of Kayara, killing 200 ISIL militants on the 27th of April. They also shelled Kayata village, killing 35 ISIL militants. Meanwhile, ISIL executed 7 civilians for collaborating with the Iraqi government by being locked in metal cages and lowered into a full swimming pool, drowning them. Continuing their destruction of old buildings in Mosul, ISIL blew up the 19th century Christian Sa'ar Kadima church and clock tower in central Mosul. The Iraqi army repelled an ISIL counterattack on the villages of Mahana and Kardan on the 29th of April, leaving 91 ISIL militants dead, and an Australian recruiter for ISIL, Neil Prakash, or as he is known, Abu Khaled al-Kambodi, is mistakenly reported to have been killed in an airstrike on Mosul. The 30th of April was a third quarter moon, and between the 1st of May to the 11th of June, the Peshmerga and Iraqis consolidate their gains, meaning a lull in fighting. On the 2nd of May, the Iraqi army shells ISIL forces south of Mosul, killing 9, and on the 3rd of May, ISIL militants attack a Peshmerga position near Tel Scuf. The militants break through by using truck bombs, followed by bulldozers. A quick reaction force, or QRF, is called for by the Peshmerga and US forces to help personnel leave Tel Scuf. This includes a number of aircraft and drones that carry out 31 airstrikes, wiping out 2 more truck bombs, successfully repelling the attack. The battle rages for 12 more hours, killing 58 militants and leading to the capture of 3 ISIL mortars and 20 vehicles. The Peshmerga capture 3 Humvees, though there are casualties. 2 medevac helicopters are damaged by gunfire. It later emerges that the Tel Scuf attack is part of a larger ISIL counter-offensive. A Peshmerga checkpoint is destroyed and the Iraqi Special Forces foil an attack by 5 suicide bombers in the village of Kirberdan. An ISIL attack is repelled at Wardak, and more coalition forces hit 6 groups of ISIL fighters and 2 vehicles, weapon caches and a mortar system. ISIL's offensive is complicated and ultimately a failure. Meanwhile, 17 civilians in Mosul are executed for refusing to fight for the Caliphate. On the 5th of May, ISIL places 200 Mosul civilians under house arrest for refusing to fight for the Caliphate and also executes 25 ISIL fighters for escaping from battles. The 6th of May brings a new moon, and another airstrike on ISIL forces in the village of Al-Juwana kills 20. Answering prayers and accepting offerings from its followers, the Father of War emerges to attack a unit of Shia militia near the village of Mahana. Katib al-Aman Ali, or the battalions of Aman Ali, are found flayed, and 4 fled, giving grim account of what happened. On the 7th of May, an ISIL fuel station is wiped out by an airstrike, killing 17. ISIL finishes demolishing the southwest palace of Sennacherib in the ruins of Nineveh on the 9th of May, and Iraqi forces retake the village of Kabruk from ISIL, supported by the US-led coalition, in under 2 hours. 40 militants are killed and Iraqi forces advance nearer to Kayara. The 13th of May is a first quarter moon, and ISIL executes 5 fighters in Mosul for espionage, as well as 11 citizens for using cell phones. 16th of May brings ISIL executing a woman and 20 men for illegal relations. This is done by stoning and takes over an hour to perform, and on the 22nd of May it's a full moon. Between the 28th and 30th of May, 9 villages are captured southeast of Mosul by Peshmerga forces, killing 140 ISIL fighters, and on the 29th of May there is a third quarter moon. On this day, 5,500 Peshmerga and coalition fighters retake Al-Muftiyah and Jimkhor. On the 31st of May, an ISIL attack is repelled by the Iraqi army, with the militants using booby-trapped vehicles against the army's HQ, and on the 1st of June, ISIL executes 6 men in Mosul's main square for the crime of selling cigarettes. In addition to this, 13 ex-officers of Saddam Hussein's army are executed for refusing to join ISIL. On the 3rd of June, ISIL publicly burns 17 Yazidi girls for again refusing to become temporary wives for ISIL fighters. On the 5th of June, there's a new moon, and the Father of War, answering a call by the Sons of War, attacks a Peshmerga convoy. 46 Peshmerga are flayed to death, with 33 surviving with horrific injuries, of which 12 will die in hospital. Statements from witnesses vary wildly. The 6th of June brings Ramadan, and ISIL executes 11 for trying to flee ISIL-controlled territory. On the 9th of June, a woman is publicly stoned to death by ISIL outside the Zahra Mosque, and on the 12th of June it is the first quarter moon, bringing the Iraqi army renewing its offensive to the south of Mosul, invading the village of Haj Ali on the Tigris River, capturing it on the 13th of May, and the 20th of June is a full moon. On the 25th of June, 2 senior ISIL officers in Mosul are killed by a US airstrike, Hatim Talib al-Hamundi and Deputy War Minister Basim Mohammed Ahmad Sultan al-Bajari, who is suspected of organising mustard gas attacks in Mosul in 2014. The 27th of June is the third quarter moon, and on the 4th of July, the Father of War takes down an Iraqi Mi-17 helicopter that is returning from a raid to capture an ISIL commander at the Tigris River. The pilots are blinded and the team are flayed. The prisoner and pilot survive, driven insane, and all 20 commandos on board die. The 7th to the 9th of July brings the festive holiday of Eid al-Fitr, and that marks the end of Ramadan. The Iraqi army captures an area southwest of Haj Ali near the Tigris River. On the 9th of July, the Iraqi army captured Khiara airfield west without resistance. The 12th of July is the first quarter moon, and on the 15th, Iraqi troops build a floating bridge over the Tigris River, connecting Makmur to Khiara. Turkey's President Erdogan launches a crackdown responding to a military coup. On the 16th of July, a boat carrying around 2 tons of explosives to the floating bridge is destroyed by an airstrike. Turkey begins arresting military officers, including pro-NATO ones. Erdogan blames Mohammed Fethullah Gulen for being the mastermind. The US government refuses to give Gulen to Turkey. On the 19th of July, women protest on the streets of Mosul. ISIL fighters kill 12 and arrest more. The 20th of July brings a full moon, and on the 26th of July, over 1,500 ISIL members escape Mosul and head towards Raqqa. The 27th of July brings the third quarter moon, and on the 28th of July there are reports of a youth group attack on an ISIL prison, where a prison guard dies and dozens escape. ISIL had ransoms on these prisoners. Following this, ISIL leaders, including Abu Shuaib, are killed in an airstrike on Khiara. Al-Jabiri and the Sons of War move to relocate themselves and the Father of War to Raqqa. 6 couriers leave Mosul carrying the ritual "Call forth those from outside." Al-Jabiri is one of these couriers. The Father of War emerges to answer prayers dedicated to it. It brings down an American F-15 Strike Eagle on its way to perform an airstrike in Mosul. The pilot ejects, but is flayed alive before they can hit the ground. The surveillance systems record their horrible deaths, and the USAF recovers the bodies. Finally, on the 3rd of August, under cover of darkness, a convoy leaves Mosul for Raqqa. A tanker at the centre contains the Father of War. Okay, that concludes part 1 of Iconoclasts. The next video in this series will detail the first part of the scenario, a black smoke rising.